we've been working for the last 6 years on a project that we launched. We call it Genesis. And at that time, Genesis still comes like the origin of something, small that is very meaningful. And we call in the Genesis project, all the research, we were focusing on micro and small firms in developing countries. Now, in terms of numbers, micro and small firms represent 99% of all the firms in the world, regardless of whether you are located in developing countries or developed countries. And we are talking about companies that have less than 50 employees. Now, these companies represent the majority, of course, in all supply chains, global supply chains or local supply chains. And it turns out that these ones have also a lot of the responsibility on why certain regions are more or less competitive than others. And when we started working on this, I was working mainly, leading the operations of the Center for Transportation and Logistics for Latin America. And we realized that this has a huge importance on why certain countries were having certain marginal increases in gross domestic product compared to others. And then when you look at developed countries, you have companies developing very well, you have microfirms with certain challenges. But when you look at the big companies from the developed world into developing countries, and I'm talking about the big ones, you look at Unilever, P&G, Walmart, Coca-Cola, you usually are going to see huge growth in developing countries, sometimes even higher than in the developed world. So why then the developing countries are not developing as fast as we will expect? Well, it turns out that these micro firms or small firms, less than 50, less than 10 employees, are actually decreasing in productivity all the time. Many of them survive 1 month, 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 disappears depending on the country sector. But the barrier of entry is so low and informality that then suddenly when you have challenges of just trying to find what to eat every day, then you open your window and start selling something, maybe the cakes, maybe, tacos, whatever you can find. And those tiny businesses that sometimes are micro retailers, micro restaurants, are actually driving a lot of the economy in those countries. And they actually serve also as an important customer point for these large companies, also developed countries. So what we are looking at is how we can actually leverage knowledge in supply chain management to help these micro firms in developing countries. And what we've been working with the Genesis project, we evolve into something that focuses more on how we can alleviate poverty via focusing on these micro and small firms, because we are talking about those entrepreneurs that are created out of necessity, but at the same time the market that actually depends entirely on these micro firms. What happens is that many times these micro firms, because they don't have purchasing power, they get the worst deals. It's not the same to be Walmart than to be a corner store. So, and then people that do not have credit cards or money, they tend to have this challenge of cash, so they tend to go and buy smaller amounts, actually higher prices than anybody will go to a big retailer. So what we're trying to do is to help them improve their operations so that at the end this can translate into also benefits for consumers that depend on this market. So we started this Lift Lab project that we are actually launching this summer. And we are starting to work mainly in Latin America with a big project working in Mexico. So we're being sponsored by FEMSA, a big company that works with different organizations in Latin America. And what we are doing here is that we are going to focus on working with 200,000 micro retailers in Mexico. And we want to also work with 300,000 consumers. And we want to do a massive characterization of this market, which is by the fact the one that has the highest growth compared to convenience or other channel in all the region. And our idea is with this characterization, understand exactly what are the challenges in terms of adoption of technology and digitalization, what are the supply chain management and business capabilities, what are the best terms they should work with suppliers and consumers, who is the consumer that access to this market, what are the services and products they should offer to these consumers, and how they can actually drive and grow more. And we are doing this also in partnership with our local university, Montreal Tech, working with hundreds of students that are going to also help us do this field study. And our idea is that by looking at all this information, we are going to completely develop a new research streamline that is going to help and advance the understanding of this market and bring benefits for the bottom billion, which is part of the main mission of this Lift Lab. So some of the hypotheses we have that we believe are gonna help these companies to grow have to do with things that all different stakeholders should do. From one side, there are terms given by the big suppliers that are really squeezing, the survival of these companies. For instance, if you are a big retailer and you receive goods from, I don't know, PepsiCo, Danone, Coca-Cola, you usually get to, some days to pay, like let's say 60, 90 days, 120 days, depending on, what are the agreements. But you get plenty of, 2, 3, 4 months. But if you are a micro retailer, you either pay during the transaction moment or you pay in advance. So when we studied in 9 countries, 500 of these companies, it turns out that the average was -7 days. So they're actually paying in advance. Now you say, well, how does that affect? Well, entirely, because when you look at the cash conversion cycle of the companies, right, you may actually have an increase in sales of certain products. But if you actually are paying in advance, it's very likely that you're putting at risk your cash availability, which is, of course, the reason why companies get into bankruptcy. Now, what we see is that we can help them get better terms. If we, for instance, instead of paying in the transaction or in advance, we are able to provide insights to the big suppliers that give them only 2 weeks, even if you charge them a little bit more. But that will probably imply that they will get more product moved, they will increase sales in the other side, and with that increase in sales, you at the end are going to also get higher profits, and at the same time, companies will become more stable. So we are looking at solutions like that. We also look at different ways in which companies can leverage the use of smartphones to really improve their digitalization and their planning. For instance, some of these companies are really keeping records, even in napkins or in papers, and instead of using just a cell phone to charge orders as well to a supplier, to the same time also access consumers, and understanding how the better use of different dashboards are also going to help the planning and also the financial performance. And at the same time also with consumers. Certain consumers are looking at convenience stores or modern channel for products that are not necessarily related to items, like groceries. Could be they want to pay electricity bills, or they want to get cash, or they want to pay water supply. So those services that are now very common can also be translated into products that these microfirms may offer as well. And we want to also understand and help. So there are plenty of things that are related to understanding what is the portfolio of things that we should include and help them to attract, and at the same time also how to build more capabilities. What are the knowledges, what are the business competences, what are the supply chain management capabilities that are tailored towards growth and survival of this market. And this is what we intend to really discover.